Hey, welcome to the Rain and Morale podcast. So do you ever feel like screaming out in the office, on Zoom or outside the school gates, for the love of God, come on, really? Then if this is you and you're looking for an honest, fun and frank podcast on life and business, then sit back and listen to me, Rain and Morale. I'll be bringing great people on the show to talk, share and debate their life experiences and business challenges, keeping the show unpolished, but in a fun and unique British style, with sarcasm, tenacity, maybe a few swear words or tears. This podcast keeps it real, honest, raw, and removes the bullshit in the only way I know how, through authenticity and getting shit done. Think of it less like the Housewives of New York or Towie with the lipo and drama, and more like the house lives of the real world. I hope you'll take something away to be better informed, laugh, smile, or maybe even finally getting the confidence to shout, come on really. So enjoy. Hi David, welcome to the Rain and Morale podcast. How are you?
Awake, pretty good. Yeah, it's early, but yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So for the listeners, the little hint there, David is not in the UK. It's 4:00 here and David's at sort of 8 hours behind us. So huge welcome. David and I kind of met through a mutual understanding of comments on LinkedIn, and we kind of reached out and had a chat a few months ago, and I was just really intrigued by David's journey and where he is now in terms of the kind of regenerative space. So David is a serial social entrepreneur who's creating lots of highly collaborative communities that are fundamentally at their core working towards projects that are leading to a more ecological, regenerative platform for planet Earth. So anyway, David will do a better job than me. Firstly, welcome. And secondly, please tell people a little bit about your background and how you ended up kind of corporate world into where you are today.
That's a good question. So, yeah, I used to be a systems architect. I was in the world of software for the first half of my career, writing video games in particular. And at one point ended up in the US because the company I was part of got acquired by Microsoft many years ago. Then had some about seven years. Oh yeah, I was 35, I guess, was when my midlife crisis kicked in, when my father was diagnosed with cancer. So that forced me to reevaluate my life. And I thought I might go into law and become a public interest lawyer. So I was looking for a law program and bumped into an MBA program that was focused on sustainability. And this was 15, 16 years ago now. And got very intrigued by that. Went along for an open house, and the next thing I know, I'm signing up for the program, and its tagline was "Transform yourself, business, and the world," and it definitely did a number on me.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I absolutely pivoted, and yeah, coming out of the program, I didn't really want to go back into the pure technology side of things. So I just started having conversations with lots of interesting people to figure out what I should do. And now 12, 13 years later, that's basically what I do. Is I have this large network of people working on regeneration, and rather than them coming to me to go, oh, do you know somebody, blah, 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 I just put them into communities and program those in a way so that all of these people get to meet one another and then go, oh, I should work with you. You're interesting. I need what it is that you're doing.
Amazing. And you say it so matter of factly and quite, but that in itself obviously is a huge journey. Can you remember, like, was there a pivotal moment during that course where you went, shit, this is resonating, I am going to pivot? Was there a particular topic or teacher or?
Well, the program, so at the time there were 3 programs, MBA programs here in the US focused on sustainability, all of which, had been set up by and involved pioneers in the space, I guess. And they were all idiosyncratic in their own way.
Right.
This program had actually a strong grounding in permaculture, and a bit of theosophy. So the founder of the very first class we had was with the founder of the program. And one of the books she got us to read actually was Paul Hawkins' Ecology of Commerce. Then later on we read Cradle to Cradle, Natural Capital, all the classics of the genre. But the Ecology of Commerce in particular is a really comprehensive read as to all of the ills of industrial civilization. So somewhere after reading that, I was just that's the thing that really still sticks out.
So sorry, can you say the name of the book again for us and who it's by?
Yes, The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawkins, who also,
thank you.
His more recent books have probably been a bit more upbeat, more solution focused, right? Of here's all the cool, Regeneration being the most recent one of here's all of this cool stuff happening. But that one was just, this is, we need to stop doing this. We need to stop doing this.
Awesome. So I guess for a lot of people who might be pivoting or going through that journey, what made you kind of home in on that collaboration of communities? And how is that? How many people have you got now in your kind of networks? And talk a little bit as well about some of the really exciting projects that it means to be regenerative.
That's a lot of questions. I may need to
Okay, let's do the first one. So how many people have you got in your community right now?
Well, the primary active community is the Global Regeneration Collab, and that's got we just broke 1,000 members. And running 6, 7, 8 calls a week, I think, within that to collide people together. And the other question of why collaboration or why communities. So when I first started having coffee with all of these interesting people, I was actually mainly at the time working out of the Impact Hub in San Francisco. So we were in a co-working space focused on social enterprises, focused on impact. And as I was talking to all of these different people about what it was that they were working on, I would continually find people, I would talk to 2 different people within the space of a week, both of whom were probably inhabiting the same co-working space, who were working on very similar related things, but they didn't know one another. And I'd just be, how is this possible? How do you not know one another? It'd be very valuable for you to know one another. So I got and I guess when I was in software, I'm very user-centered. I like to, when I'm designing software things, I design them to meet the needs of people. So when I was in a co-working space and seeing all of these different needs that could be met within that community that they had, but were not getting met because people weren't, unless I was brokering these relationships, nothing would happen if somebody wasn't doing that. It was just, I became obsessed with how to fix that problem at scale. Just such a geek.
And by the sounds of it, you have done. And actually, for someone to come from a kind of tech design engineer kind of creative into the forefront of actually connecting people, that's quite a shift in terms of persona and character, isn't it? That's quite, or were you always quite, you know?
Yes.
Because people often think about connectors as gobby people like me, whereas actually, you know, the stereotypical, you know, engineer or they think, oh no, they wouldn't be doing that.
Yes, I often, yeah. I mean, as an engineer, there's two parts to the answer to that question. Yes is one. I am quite an introvert. I've developed my capacity to be more extrovert over time because I figured it was useful. But yeah, my natural inclination is just to go and, you know, hide in a cave somewhere. And actually, after I talk to a bunch of people, I do have to go and give myself time to process that, because it's totally not a natural state for me. But when I was in the business world, I always discovered that what I realized afterwards was I was the person who could talk to every kind of business unit or people who are doing whatever and see that, oh, this person, you know, the director of marketing isn't talking to the person over, you know, whoever it is. And I would often be walking around. I realized I reinvented Hewlett Packard's management by walking around when I was at Microsoft, because we all had separate offices. Nobody was really talking. So I'd spend half my day just walking from office to office, figuring out what was actually happening, making sure that the information flow was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good, useful skill to develop. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, like you say, you touched on it, but, you know, learning those more kind of extrovert skills, there is a lot of people who are extroverts who damn well need to learn about how to be an introvert and listen. And God only hopes after the end of this podcast you're not in a cold dark room with a flannel on your forehead. But let's move on to kind of, because I'm interested to get into the detail, and especially for the listeners, about regenerative projects. There is a term and phrase often used moving on from sustainability into regenerative. So can you cherry pick a couple of projects and talk to us about what that actually means?
Yes. So a number of years ago, I saw this documentary by a gentleman called John Liu, Liu. There's a few different versions of it kicking around. Green Gold, maybe, is the name of one of them. But it was he was documenting these very large landscape scale ecological regeneration initiatives. The one that really sticks in my mind was the Loess Plateau in China, which is LOESS, which was a ridiculously large area of land that had been heavily degraded over the years. And the World Bank, they got a loan from the World Bank for $640 million, I think it was. This is somewhere in the 90s. And then, you know, paid to do a mass reforestation and whatever, you know, rebuilt, you know, terraces, various things like that to allow, you know, better water retention. And what they found over I think it was about, you know, 5-6 years afterwards, the local salaries had doubled, you know, heat waves had reduced, there was better growing, potential for better, the crops were doing better. And when you look at the pictures of the before and after, it is almost desert to a blooming kind of Garden of Eden
system. Yeah.
Spectacular, the difference. And in that case, you know, on the financial side, the Chinese government paid the World Bank back through, so this ecosystem, all the soil was, you know, being swept away, and it was clogging up some of the dams, the hydropower dams. So they were having to dredge out the dams every year, or every couple of years, and that's insanely expensive. So just by not having to do that penciled out, that allowed them to pay back the World Bank on a $640 million loan. And it's just at that point, I became, once I realized that, I became pretty obsessed with the regeneration stuff, because it's like, this can fight, on the one side, we see all these stories saying that there's all this, land degradation, it's impacting the economy. I mean, we can just look at the, British rivers right now, for instance. But that it's economically viable, it works in everybody's interest to do this, and yet we're letting all the ecosystems degrade. And I'm just like, okay, there's that's that dynamic has to shift at some point in time. And then if we look, after reading The Ecology of Commerce, it was very clear that if you zoom right out, the economy is degrading the biosphere. So what we need is an economy that is, and yet we know how to economically operate in a regenerative fashion. So, okay, what we need is a regenerative economy. And then I just started, digging around from there. And, one of the projects we're working on right now is a mangrove, or people in the network are working on, is a mangrove reforestation project in Kenya. Carbon credits. Some of the revenue goes into a community-led fund. The community manage that fund, decide how they want to spend or invest that capital. They invest in their own local business ecosystem. So, and just by regenerating the mangroves, restoring the mangroves, that increases, it's a fish nursery. So once you've got healthy mangroves, you have a healthy fishing ecosystem. And one of the primary drivers for deforestation there was, wood for cooking, actually. So, what we're doing is, systemically analyzing the drivers of the deforestation and constellating a set of solutions. So, and in this case, there's some very interesting clean cook stoves, which also get hooked into the carbon market through the blockchain. Which, so the community, helps the communities thrive. Having a healthy ecosystem means, especially for more rural communities, right? It's what their economy depends upon. So they need that, and the ecosystem itself is healthier. All the species are healthier, and you're sequestering carbon. And mangroves are actually one of the better ways to sequester carbon. They're pretty fast growing, is my understanding. There's a lot of people are really excited about blue carbon, varying kinds. Seaweed's pretty good too.
Seagrass.
The seagrass. There's an interesting project going on right now analyzing where all the seagrass. I think it's where all the seagrass is around the British coast, and where the ideal restoration places are. As long as the British water companies or
Today, this is no word of a lie. Sorry, last night I'm sat watching a programme on Channel 5, and up comes this advert for Severn Trent Water, and it's repeated at every break. Severn Trent Water, who, may I add, is not the only person doing this, talking about how they're protecting the waterways, and they're planting all these trees and all these things. I'm like, oh my God, you amongst all of them, we have 377 sewage leakage points around our little island. Don't come to me and advertise on TV that you're planting trees. We pay you to deal with this water because we're in a privileged position. We have an infrastructure to do that. So you're just getting, and there was another water company as well advertising, and I think it is because of the recent bad press. Planting a tree does not make up for shoveling shite into our oceans. How does that work?
It's
Sorry, that was me having a bit of a rant there, but very topical and very, very right now, I guess, for sure. And I think something else that you touched on in terms of, do you think that this, because as we work to a regenerative society, often we talk about, and quite a few of my guests will talk about that share of wealth, with communities and from all walks of life. I think that's the biggest blocker, isn't it? It's the biggest fear from the big corporations, because what then happens to the 10%? What then happens to our private pension funds, etc., etc.? What's your kind of view on it?
That's a good, that is the heart of the conundrum in some way or another, is, exactly that. We, historical statistics, right? I believe at some point the ratio of CEO to regular, median employee pay, historically had a ceiling of something like 50 to 1, and now, at least here in the US, and some of those pay packets in the UK sound quite large too. We're up to a 200, 300, 400. I mean, you can't look at Jeff Bezos as an example, for instance, because he and Elon Musk probably skew the numbers.
Slightly skew the numbers, I guess.
Yeah, but and yet at the same time, I mean, we're seeing the hollowing out of social services. Every time there's a tax reduction, right? The NHS slowly gets killed step by step. So the need to have a more, and if you look at Mondragon, is a really interesting case study over in the Basque region of Spain. Jesuit priest in the 50s, I think it was in the 50s, basically set up a cooperative. They ended up with a cooperative economy across the entire Mondragon region, right? There's however many interlinked cooperative businesses. And the difference between those earning the most and those earning the least there, they started off with a 5x difference. The CEOs of the companies would get paid 5 times more. They're now up to about a 10 times difference. But the quality of life, my understanding is that a lot of us, I'm sure they have their own issues, but lots of the other things that we're seeing in other Western societies as a result of kind of of the way the mainstream governments are thinking about economics, is not leading us to the place where we want to go. And at the same time, all of these fiduciaries, right, who are responsible for, and the trustees of the pension funds and whatever else, they're responsible for maximizing the return. They need to ensure that they have money to pay people out. So they're looking for the things that will give them they're obligated to find the things that will give them the greatest return on their investment. And the way to get the greatest return is normally to screw a bunch of people.
What a beautiful summary. But it's you're right. At every turn in life, whether you need help with an insurance policy or something, you realize you're just being used and abused and taken advantage of. And I think it's interesting. What's exciting for me is hearing that you've got 1,000 members. Now, if there's 10 of you, or of all of those 1,000 members, they've got another 100 contacts working on regenerative projects. That's bloody exciting. So do you decide what projects you allow into the community, or are you really open to people saying, look, I'm working on, I don't know, a conservation project in Panama, and am I just automatically in, or how does it work?
Well, with the currently functional community, that is a pretty we're open to anybody joining, and then if you've got a project, we'll run a conversation around it to attract people who'd be aligned. The new one we're setting up is we're prototyping right now. We have a slightly different pattern of operation because we're trying to figure out what's the business model to put around it. The Global Regeneration Collab is a not-for-profit, so yeah, we're just doing everything we possibly can to connect people. This one is going to be a bit more, it's called the Rainforest. It's kind of a membership procedure for people who want to then bring projects. There's a contractual agreement around, okay, we'll provide a certain amount, there is a reciprocal financial relationship. We provide value, we receive something. I mean, that's part of the reciprocation is a key principle of regeneration. And so when I set up it as a non-profit, there's a lot of intangible reciprocation, but people do need to eat. Yes. And I don't know if it's I feel guilty. I feel guilty around money.
No, but I can hear that. I can hear, and I often find that with people who are running non-for-profits or are doing things for the greater good. Actually, you and I both know when we look at the world of economics or tech or just the way the world is, there has to be a commercial hook or benefit, because everybody, wherever they are in the world, has a fundamental requirement for even the basics of education, healthcare, food, family. So I think it always feels awkward talking about money, doesn't it? But the reality is you've got to earn money, unless you are a Jeff Bezos or an Elon Musk and you've got a couple of 100 billion stashed away. But let's be honest, these people who make tremendous amounts of money don't do things for nothing. So I think you've either got to be very privileged to be philanthropic and be able to do that. But no, don't be shy about talking about the money. I'd like to talk, we've probably got another 5 or 10 minutes, but I'd love to talk about a couple of more of the regenerative projects that give examples of how it really is that kind of circular. So maybe not, I'm not asking you to pick your favourites, because I'm sure you'll have a community who'll then kick off, but just some that stick out.
So I've got a few different ones. I have a friend, actually, a guy called Andy Middleton, who's over in Wales. I think he's in St David's, something like St David's. And he and his colleagues have been running this Transition Lab Wales. It's a community, I guess, where they've been bringing together people from the Welsh government, the Welsh Farmers Union, the Welsh healthcare system, to look at the potential for how Brexit and related things are going to be impacting the Welsh agriculture system, and how by growing healthier food, how to get the healthcare system to realize that buying regional regeneratively produced food would provide better outcomes for patients. And there's all sorts of other interlinkages between, especially psychological, around humans being in nature and depression and various other things, and the cost of the Welsh healthcare system for depression and tension related medicines, right, is ridiculously high. So they're all coming together to explore, okay, what would it mean to transition the way we use land across Wales, and how do we help the farmers transition to deal with all of these changes, and thus sequester a huge amount of carbon. And they're starting to do something similar up in Scotland as well. And then, yeah, I've got this friend who's over in, what's actually, a friend in Colombia who's, setting up an ecoversity down there. They've bought a piece of land, and
Right.
they've set up kind of an educational community there, working with the local communities as well as other people who want to come and learn about regeneration. And they're looking at how to reforest and otherwise regenerate that local community. Also have another friend in Mexico they've been Sierra Gorda Biosphere Reserve. There's this organization, Grupo Ecologico Sierra Gorda. For the last 30 years or so, they've been, building this community across the Biosphere Reserve. All of these, it's a very rural area, so, small villages.
Yeah.
And the woman who set this project up all those years ago, has been working with all of these communities, and setting up all sorts of regenerative businesses. So they really have instantiated a regenerative economy. The agricultural patterns there are all regenerative. They've got, some eco-lodge type eco-tourism things. They've got a bunch of kind of small businesses that are processing, plastic waste or whatever that comes into the community, and, upcycling it. And that, whatever, the woman's name is Patty, I can't remember her last name. And if you get her going, she's got all these amazing stories of.
Right, that's the next podcast guest for sure.
I once interviewed her. I was trying to introduce her and what she was doing to the community, and a 1 hour call, 50 minutes. I thought, 10 minutes she could introduce it, and then we can have a discussion and whatever. 50 minutes later, it's like, okay.
Time's up.
Well, but she's fascinating. She's a great storyteller.
Yeah. Oh well, listen, and I think that's what's great about what you're doing. There's even just in those 4 or 5 examples, there's such a huge, array of where it's working all around the world. Kind of from grassroots upwards, and like you said earlier, the reality is we do know this stuff. We know it works. It's just about flipping it and putting it into scale, I guess. So listen, first of all, thank you for going on that course and reading that book and having that pivotal moment, because clearly you're doing something amazing with people who are as passionate about, helping planet Earth as you are and as I am, and actually creating action. And we all know so many people are in their own little pockets, aren't they, doing things. It's like, guys, just come together. Like you're all doing similar things. Let's get you together. So kudos to you for that. Some super exciting projects. And I guess people could just reach out to you directly. Or is there a website that they can go to?
grc.earth is the website. But yes, otherwise, reach out to me on LinkedIn is the easiest thing to do. And then I'll add you to my Rolodex, I guess.
Well, listen, for those people listening and you're not seeing on video, David Hodgson, you can find him obviously on LinkedIn, and grc.earth is the website. So listen, David, thank you so much for your time today. I love your style. You need to kick some more ass and don't be afraid to say about the money, and you're doing some amazing stuff, and it's been a pleasure talking to you previously and today. So thank you so much, and have an awesome evening.
You too. Thank you. This was fun.
You're welcome.
So that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Road and Morale podcast. Have an awesome day and see you next time.